Homage to Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to Manjushri, homage to all the lineage masters. Profound and subtle dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we can follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate all sentient beings, please generate unsurpassed bodhicitta. Yesterday, we discussed the 5 perfections. In any sutra teaching, these 5 perfections are expressed through the phrase, "Thus have I heard at one time." The 5 perfections are primarily conveyed through "Thus have I heard at one time." This is how they're explained. Now today we'll discuss the second topic, bringing forth the subject, the contributing circumstance. Bringing forth the subject in this Tantra is quite similar to the approach in sutra teachings. However, there are certain aspects that differ from the sutra approach. Through study and contemplation, all of you here will come to understand that Tantra and Sutra, these uncommon aspects exist not because Vajrayana is somehow unreasonable. These uncommon aspects don't exist because they're somehow unreasonable, nor is it because certain Vajrayana teachings cannot be explained using the principles of the sutras. That's not the case at all. There are simply certain special circumstances involved. You can only understand these through proper study and contemplation. So for all of you here, it's very important to engage deeply in studying and contemplating the tantric teachings. After thinking this through carefully yesterday, I requested some of the Dharma teachers and Khenpos here, to provide instruction on this Tantra, and I hope that in the future they'll offer instruction on texts like the Guyagarbha Tantra. When this guidance is provided, both the students who receive the teachings and the teachers who transmit them will more easily develop genuine certainty in their minds. For this reason, from now on, I am also repeatedly praying to the Dakinis and Dharma protectors for their permission and support. In the past, there were basically no Han Chinese teaching or guiding others in these tantric practices. But if this continues to be the case, then, truly speaking, the tantric teachings in Han regions are still quite lacking at present. It will be difficult for Vajrayana to spread as widely as the sutra teachings have. In the Tibetan region, although there's a tradition of reciting mantras and practicing yidam deities, such traditions do exist. But the actual explanation of tantras and transmission of pith instructions by practitioners are still held by only a very small number of people within the monasteries. Not all Tibetan people have mastered the generation stage, completion stage, and the unsurpassed great perfection. For example, when we hold the Great Bliss Dharma Assembly, a lot of people come. But among them, how many truly understand the uncommon pith instructions of Atiyoga? Very, very few indeed. This year's Great Bliss Dharma Assembly also drew a very large crowd. Do they have faith in Vajrayana? As I mentioned yesterday, they certainly do have faith in Vajrayana. But among them, how many truly grasp the pith instructions of the highest practice? Very few as well. Here at Larungar, we have so many monastics nowadays. But among all these monastics, how many have truly entered the Vajrayana class, studied the Tantras, received the pith instructions, and engaged in actual practice? Not that many, really. Generally speaking, Vajrayana really isn't suitable for everyone, since not everyone has the necessary faith. So in these regards, we should cultivate genuine confidence in Vajrayana. If we can do this, then in the ages to come, these teachings won't easily disappear from this world. For many people today, the practice methods and pith instructions of Vajrayana are truly indispensable. Otherwise, trying to tame the mind using only general sutra instructions would be very difficult. His Holiness Jigme Pansok Rinpoche often spoke about this in his many instructions. Many of the senior practitioners here are very clear about this. Today I'm just sharing with you some of these essential points in a brief way. According to the common approach, bringing forth the subject occurs when the teacher invokes the teachings by smiling, radiating light, extending his tongue, and so forth. In the sutra tradition, whenever any scripture is being taught, there are always certain auspicious conditions that give rise to the teaching. We can examine these circumstances from several perspectives. The primary one involves the teacher himself, the Buddha's own display. Sometimes the Buddha displays a smile, Other times he radiates light, perhaps from the white curl between his eyebrows, from his crown, or from his heart. Sometimes he extends his tongue until it covers the entire tracheocosm, then draws it back in again. These are miraculous displays. At this moment, the Buddha would never smile without reason, as worldly people do. He doesn't just grin or laugh aimlessly for no particular purpose. Likewise, the Buddha wouldn't radiate light from his body for no reason. Nor would he extend his tongue randomly. These things don't just happen. When disciples with the karmic affinity see this, they ask, "Worldly honored one, why did you smile just now? You were not smiling before. What has made you smile now? And why is your body radiating such light?" When they ask these questions, it's because the auspicious conditions have manifested. The Buddha recognizes that in a certain place, the time has ripened to guide sentient beings. He then begins to teach a specific sutra. In many Mahayana scriptures, this is how the interdependent origination from the Buddha's side is described. At the same time, there is also the interdependent origination from the side of the retinue. The retinue brings forth the teachings by requesting through mannerisms and speech so that whatever constitutes the meaning will be induced. For example, regarding the assembly's role, when Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Arhats, and other beings have all gathered together, someone like Vajrayana will stand up, prostrate before the Buddha, and request him to teach on a particular topic. Sometimes they make their request through formal words and petitions. Other times they offer prostrations or other profound gestures of devotion as a request. These are the auspicious conditions arising from the side of the retinue. In the sutra tradition, once these conditions come together, it allows a scripture to manifest in this world. That is the general pattern. Nevertheless, according to this extraordinary context, Vajrayana has its own unique, uncommon way of teaching. The way the Tantras arise is quite different from the sutra approach. The meaning of phenomena primordially awakened as the mandala of great purity and evenness becomes apparent within the wisdom intent of the soul Buddha, because the Sugata invokes himself to express the aphorism, and through awe and amazement for this nature, the teachings are thus brought forth. Here it is not like the sutra tradition where the Buddha smiles or where the retinue prostrates and makes requests. It doesn't happen that way. Rather, we could explain it in this way. From the perspective of self-appearing within the self-manifestation of Kuntuzangpo, the mind-direct transmission of the Buddhas is fully present. That is its nature. This is the unique, uncommon, interdependent origination of the Vajrayana. It reveals that all phenomena have always been primordially awakened as the mandala of great purity and evenness. Of course, the Tantras need to clearly reveal that all phenomena have always existed within the mandala of great purity and evenness, primordially awakened and inseparable in their nature. This is the Buddha's unique wisdom intent, the Buddha's wisdom itself. All phenomena are primordially awakened within this inseparable state of great purity and evenness. This is the Buddha's sole intent, the Buddha's realization, the Buddha's actual state. As for how this state manifests, the Tathagata expresses it in a most extraordinary way. He proclaims the teaching to himself, so to speak. To be clear, this proclamation is not at all like talking to oneself in a worldly sense. It is not like when a person is all alone and begins talking to themselves. It's not like that at all. This is simply the only way we can express it in words. All phenomena are primordially equal and pure. Only the Buddha truly realizes this state, and when he realizes it, he manifests it in a most extraordinary and wondrous manner, by proclaiming the teaching to himself, as it were. While we describe it this way, in reality, the Buddha is not doing what I just described, like a person talking to themselves saying, "Oh, when I go over there later, I need to cook a meal, and while I'm cooking, I definitely need to do this and that." Some people walk along the road constantly muttering to themselves like that. It's not like that. It's not literally talking to oneself. We can put it that way, but in truth, it is the Tathagata deliberately proclaiming the teaching to himself that serves as the auspicious condition here. This is explained quite clearly in the second chapter of the Guhyagarbha Tantra. Moreover, from the perspective of the greatness of awakening, the original purity of all phenomena as kayas and wisdom is Kuntuzangpo, who, as the aspect of sustaining method, brings forth the subject as stated in the root Tantra. In the second chapter, there are several such types of interdependent origination. One is the origination from Kuntuzangpo, another is from Kuntuzangmo, and there is also the origination from their union, several different types in all. The first one, how does this origination come about? All phenomena exist within the essence of unborn kayas and wisdom, and they've always been primordially pure. We could say this kind of wisdom. The 3 kayas and 5 wisdoms exist within the essence of all phenomena. Their luminous aspect definitely exists as unconditioned phenomena. From the perspective of the sustaining method aspect, this is called the origination through Kuntuzangpo, bringing forth the teaching. This is what's stated in the root Tantra. How astonishing! The limbs of the Vajra aggregates. The root Guhyagarbha Tantra explains this. How astonishing! These are words expressing something utterly marvelous. The Vajra aggregates means the 5 aggregates are actually the 5 Tathagatas, as we will discuss later. Right now, in this worldly experience, the aggregates of form, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are impermanent. They're not of Vajra nature. But in the state of a Buddha, these 5 aggregates are realized as the 5 Vajras. This is truly astonishing. From what perspective are we saying this? We're speaking from the perspective that all phenomena are primordially pure. When we say all phenomena are primordially pure, it doesn't mean mere emptiness or utter nothingness. It's not that nothing exists at all. It's not like that. The 5 aggregates are actually the 5 Tathagatas. This is how it's expressed. Thus, this speech concisely reveals that the universe and inhabitants are great purity. Just now, didn't we discuss the origination through Kuntuzangpo bringing forth the teaching? The reality is that all phenomena have always been primordially pure. The sentient beings are pure, and the inanimate world is pure. When we say both the inanimate and sentient worlds are pure, provisionally speaking, all the mountains, rivers, and lands are like the immeasurable palaces of the Pure Land of ultimate bliss. The entire world is pure. As for sentient beings, they temporarily appear to be burdened by karma and afflictions. One moment they're erupting in anger, the next feeling greedy, the next drowning in ignorance, then sleepy, then unable to sleep, suffering all the while. Especially here, with the low oxygen at high altitude, everyone's sleep is disturbed. You spend the whole night tossing and turning in discomfort. On the surface, it appears this way, but in reality, all of this is a manifestation of the 5 wisdoms. This is true for both the environment and the beings within it. Honestly, when we don't understand, we can only put it this way. But in actuality, right now, whether we're talking about beings or the world, everything is the nature of the 5 kayas and 5 wisdoms, completely pure. Later, as we dive deeper into the teachings of the Tantra section, everyone will finally come to realize, wow, it truly is pure. You'll have no choice but to acknowledge it. This aspect is also called Kuntuzangpo. Now, Kuntuzangpo doesn't necessarily refer to a physical form. In terms of appearance, for instance, the deities in union found in Vajrayana are just the manifesting forms. But actually, Kuntuzangpo here refers to the purity of all phenomena. This purity, whether expressed through words or depicted in images, can manifest before sentient beings in the form of Kuntuzangpo. This is the first marvel, because the essence of phenomena is pure. This is the first interdependent origination. The second is as follows. In addition, from the perspective of the greatness of awakening, the evenness of the space of phenomena, spontaneously present within the nature without characteristics, is Kuntuzangmo, who, as the aspect of sustaining prajna, brings forth the subject. From the perspective of true reality, which is spontaneously present within the nature without characteristics, what we just looked at, the luminous aspect of all phenomena, actually exists within the nature without characteristics. The nature without characteristics means emptiness. Within the nature without characteristics, within emptiness, it's spontaneously present. This is the evenness of the space of phenomena. The evenness here primarily refers to emptiness, as explained in Madhyamaka, free from the 4 extremes and 8 elaborations, and it is inseparable from this nature of Buddhahood. From the wisdom perspective, this is called the origination through Kuntuzangmo, bringing forth the teaching, because the essence of phenomena is emptiness, while their nature is luminosity. From the perspective of luminous nature, it's called Kuntuzangpo. From the perspective of the empty essence, it's called Kuntuzangmo. This is what's stated in the Secret Essence Tantra. the realms of the 10 directions are primordially non-existent. Originally, the entire world is not as we imagine it to be. This is actually quite easy to understand. Right now, everyone thinks, this pillar truly exists. But whether through the lens of physics or Madhyamaka, when we analyze it, we find it is merely a conceptual construct. In reality, the pillar does not exist. On this point, Madhyamaka offers profound pith instructions. Everyone knows this is emptiness. But if it were nothing more than mere emptiness, just nothingness, then when realizing emptiness, there would be only emptiness. In that case, the various wisdoms of the Tathagata could not possibly manifest, nor could his enlightened qualities possibly emerge. If it were only empty, if that emptiness alone were the true nature, then when we attain realization, we would also just find emptiness, nothing more. But the true nature of phenomena is not merely emptiness, there is also luminosity. When we realize both the luminous nature and the empty nature in union, we will naturally cease to grasp at worldly things. But this non-grasping is not a state of mere emptiness, nor is it like a vacant void. Instead, all the Tathagata's wisdom and compassion manifest naturally. This is absolutely crucial. So sometimes I truly feel that, honestly, in some places nowadays, there are only sutra teachings available, and even within the sutra approach, the understanding is often incomplete. For example, in Chinese Han Buddhism, when it comes to the ultimate truth of emptiness, many people still haven't reached a complete understanding, not to mention the teachings on Buddha nature and the luminosity taught in Vajrayana. How many people truly understand and know this? Now, I am not saying this to disparage anyone. That is not my intention at all. But when professors and teachers from various Buddhist academies and universities sit down together to discuss these matters, it becomes clear that education in this area is indeed quite lacking. I don't dare say it's completely absent, but it is truly insufficient, which is a great pity. So, in the Root Tantra it states, the realms of the 10 directions are primordially non-existent. Thus, this speech concisely reveals that phenomenal existence is great evenness. Great evenness primarily refers to the aspect of emptiness. Earlier we discussed great purity, and now we're discussing great evenness. Great evenness is kuntuzangmo. Now, kuntuzangmo doesn't mean, when some people hear Buddha Father and Buddha Mother, they think of Daddy and Mommy. How absurd. These are merely manifesting aspects, merely symbolic representations. The truth is, many people today are lack of profound understanding of Buddhism. This is precisely why Vajrayana seems so esoteric and mysterious. When people encounter images of union or concepts of Buddha Father and Mother, they interpret them through crude, worldly language. But for those who haven't studied Vajrayana, there's not much we can do. Whether they develop wrong views or slander the teachings, we can only let things be. Hopefully in the future there will be a proper understanding in this area. From the perspective of the greatness of awakening, the inseparable truth of the great perfection of purity and evenness, the great nature itself of the male-female as method and prajna free from meeting and parting, brings forth the subject. This is the third one. Earlier, from the perspective of purity and essence, the kayas and wisdom naturally manifest. From the perspective of evenness, phenomena don't truly exist, even to the extent of an atom. These two aspects are spontaneously present within the great perfection. We can also call this the great nature itself of the male-female as method and prajna free from meeting and parting. From this perspective, this is what's stated. How astonishing! The marvel of such superb phenomena. There are 5 astonishings in total. Finding comfort and ease in the nature of mind also quotes this several times. Within non-arising, arising appears. Within non-abiding, abiding appears. Within non-ceasing, ceasing appears. 5 kinds of marvel in all. Finding comfort and ease in the nature of mind quotes this many times. Last year's studies, Finding Rest in Meditation and Finding Rest in Illusion, also quote this. Thus, this concisely reveals the inseparable 2 truths to be self-emergent wisdom. All phenomena aren't just emptiness alone, nor are they just purity alone. These two, purity and evenness, are actually inseparable and non-dual. The kayas and wisdom are inseparable, just like fire and its inherent heat. They've always been inseparable. The very essence of phenomena is precisely like this. even though phenomena have never wavered, are unwavering, and will never waver from this fundamental nature. Originally, all phenomena have never wavered from their true nature. Right now, as all phenomena appear in the form of a delusive manifestation before sentient beings, their essence still remains the inseparability of emptiness and luminosity. This reality has never wavered, nor will it ever waver in the future. All beings obstructed by the four secrets lack realization. There are four types of secrets. As we discussed yesterday, these include the secret of obscuration, the hidden secret, and so forth. Some of these are due to one's own limitations, while others arise from external factors. There is also the intrinsic secret and the secret of non-disclosure. In fact, omniscient Longchenpa stated that all four of these secrets can be included within two categories: the hidden secret and the secret of obscuration. One category is due to the limitations of sentient beings. Even if you teach them, they are unable to understand, and thus the teaching provides no tangible benefit to them. Because beings are obstructed by these four types of secrets, many have failed to realize this truth, that all phenomena are pure and all phenomena are empty, and that this emptiness and purity are fundamentally non-dual. Many beings simply have not awakened to this reality, and must be tamed through whatever way is required by those who are manifestations of compassion. Because in their true nature, all phenomena are as we've described. Through the mind direct transmission, Kuntu Zangpo fully realizes the truth of evenness, purity, and their inseparability. However, if this truth is not present within one's own self-appearing awareness, it cannot possibly manifest in one's experience of others. It is like a person who is extremely poor, but beneath their house lies a hidden treasure. Someone with divine sight knows about it. If compassion arises in that person, he will tell the poor man about it. But if he lacks compassion, even though he sees it clearly, he won't say anything. Similarly, the Buddha clearly knows that all beings possess the treasure of Buddha nature, yet they have not discovered it for themselves. Since they remain unaware, he manifests as the six guides, appearing in various forms throughout the world to teach them. Although countless manifestations of this magical manifestation matrix appear, he displays all kinds of pure and impure forms, infinite manifestations of the magical matrix. They can all be synthesized as the six Nirmanakaya sages, who incarnate in harmony with the six classes of objects to tame. The six Nirmanakaya sages, for hell beings, hungry ghosts, animals. Within the six realms there are six sages, six Buddhas. We've touched on this topic before. Even the categories of teachings taught in harmony with the elements, faculties, and minds of those to be tamed are said to be immeasurable. Nevertheless, these vehicles are subsumed here and explained as 5 categories. We'll discuss these later. The vehicle of humans and gods, the vehicle of hearers and solitary realizers, the Bodhisattva vehicle, and the Vajrayana vehicle. These can all be subsumed within the 5 vehicles. In addition, for the ferocious who are extremely difficult to tame, liberation is brought to their mind stream through wrathful means. Because some sentient beings are by nature quite wild and untamable, for such beings the Buddha manifests accordingly. For fierce males, he tames them through wrathful forms. For extremely fierce females, he tames them through union forms. Later in the Guhyagarbha Tantra, there's a specific section on manifesting wrathful mandalas. This is why among the 100 peaceful and wrathful deities, 58 appear in wrathful forms. The reason for manifesting wrathful forms is precisely this. It's to tame the beings who are extremely difficult to tame. As I mentioned the day before yesterday, beings' capacities are truly limitless. Why does Manjushra need to manifest in so many different forms? In the past, when I visited Mount Wutai, I saw the statues of Manjushra in a temple holding an extraordinary array of implements. Some holding swords, some holding wish-fulfilling jewels, or even wooden fish, all kinds of different things, some even holding weapons. If people find it hard to understand the imagery of Vajrayana, they really should think about this carefully. Actually, these same principles exist within the sutra tradition, though in a more concealed way. They're just not taught quite as explicitly and extensively. So in various sutra images, such as the thousand-armed, thousand-eyed Avalokiteshvara, all the various symbols and implements held in his hands are there to guide different types of beings. That's why he manifests with so many. It is similar to people in the ordinary world. For instance, some teachers discipline children with a whip while others use a stick. Even among the teachers here at our school, I noticed the other day that they all have different implements on their desks. Some use chalk or erasers to discipline the students directly. Everyone's weapons are different. These are the points we need to understand. Now, moving forward. Part 3, the meaning of the Tantra, the result. This has 2 sections. First, a general description of the 3 Tantras. Second, a specific explanation of the Tantra of the path. The general description of the 3 Tantras covers the ground, path, and result, while the specific explanation of the Tantra of the path uses the 11 Tantra topics. Next, we'll discuss empowerment, mantra, view, meditation, conduct, all the essential Vajrayana teachings. If you can listen to this entire teaching through to completion, many of you will be able to establish a solid foundation in Vajrayana. However, I think this year we might only finish the first structural outline. I am not even sure if we will finish the general description of the 3 Tantras. As for the specific explanation on the Path Tantra, we might not finish that at all. For the lay practitioners and monastics here, if the karmic connection is lacking, you may not have the opportunity to hear the later sections. If you happen to have left the academy by then, I hope you'll do your best to complete the teachings later through other means. As for this teaching, unless something extraordinary happens, I had originally intended to teach only the section on the view. But later I realized that every part, from beginning to end, is crucial. In any case, I am gradually forming the aspiration to teach this entire commentary until completion. Among all the courses I have vowed to teach in the past, basically none have been abandoned halfway. I also pray to the Dharma protectors, especially as I mentioned the other day, the primary ones responsible for protecting this teaching, as well as protecting all the disciples here with a karmic connection to Vajrayana. Now continuing on, Part 1, a general description of the 3 Tantras has 3 sections, the ground, the path, and the result. First, the Tantra of the root cause that is to be realized, or the ground. Within the framework of ground, path, and result, what exactly is the ground? Does ground simply mean a foundation? For those of you who have not studied Vajrayana before, we frequently use the terms ground, path, and result. But is ground just another word for foundation? We'll explain this below. First comes the Tantra of the ground, or the Tantra of the root cause. This has 4 aspects. First, revealing the ground as the intrinsic nature mandala. Second, how confusion occurs through not realizing that. Third, the way confusion never departs from the nature. Fourth, how confusion is reversed. It's divided into these 4 aspects. Part 1, revealing the ground as the intrinsic nature mandala. Actually, the ground in ground, path, and result is extremely important. If you don't understand the fundamental principles of the ground, it's as though within the sutra teachings as well, it would be difficult to have a profound understanding of phenomena's true nature. Among these, the first is as it states in the Root Tantra, fully awakened phenomena are spontaneously perfect and primordially free from bondage or release. In the primordial nature of all phenomena, there are no afflictive obscurations or cognitive obscurations binding you, nor is there a final stage where one attains liberation by becoming free from these obstacles. In truth, none of these distinctions exist. Primordially, all the qualities and wondrous powers of the Buddha are already fully perfected. Thus, as taught, all appearances, as the entirety of phenomenal existence, are the primordially pure mandala of enlightened body, speech, and mind, free from all characteristics. The primordial nature of all phenomena, regardless of whether they belong to samsara or nirvana, the inanimate environment or sentient beings, the phenomenal world, all things and all dharmas are primordially the enlightened body, speech, and mind. As I mentioned a few days ago, The Buddha's body, speech, and mind shouldn't be directly compared with ordinary human body, speech, and mind. For humans, the body is this physical form, speech is merely what came out of the mouth, and mind is simply the stream of conceptual thoughts. But the pure body, speech, and mind of the Buddha aren't like that at all. Body is the support of wisdom, speech is the state of non-arising, mind is non-conceptual wisdom. It's completely the pure dharmata. This is called the spontaneous mandala of body, speech, and mind. All phenomena are originally like this, a mandala where purity and emptiness are inseparable. Within this state, all conceptual characteristics are transcended before our eyes. This is a pillar, this is a vase, this is good, this is bad, male, female, white, red. All these various characteristics exist, but all these characteristics are merely deluded perceptions. On this point, even physicists believe that time, space, people, and objects are all human illusions. Einstein said this too. I don't think he studied the Guhyagarbha Tantra, nor did he study Madhyamaka, but sometimes through deep contemplation, when he analyzed reality with his extraordinarily sharp intellect, he realized that indeed none of these things are reliable. They are all illusory. Occasionally such insights might have arisen in his conceptual mind, and he'd write down a statement. Because he was such an important figure, even a single statement of his could later spread throughout the world. If a different realized person had said it, their words might not receive such universal recognition, free from partial distinctions, free from any partiality whatsoever. But haven't we already fallen into partiality? We say, this is black, this is white, this is up, this is down. Everything is biased toward one side. But in the true nature, do these distinctions truly exist? Indeed, not to mention the Guhyagarbha Tantra, even from the Madhyamaka perspective, there's no partiality. Everything is great evenness and great purity. To awaken as the great nature of evenness is called the natural, spontaneously present mandala of the ground. This is called the mandala of the ground. Actually, the ground in ground, path, and result, what we often call the primordial ground. Kuntuzangpo has already realized this within his own self-appearing awareness. Sentient beings haven't realized this, so it can also be called Buddha nature. Now, Buddha nature isn't something where emptiness and non-emptiness are separate entities. Some people imagine Buddha nature is simply something bright and shining, or a luminous substance, that this is Buddha nature. In reality, it is nothing of the sort. There was a PhD student at the Chinese University of Hong Kong whose understanding of Buddha nature really amused me. He started writing about Buddha nature. His doctoral dissertation was on Buddha nature. He made so many mistakes. I won't get into it. He was also someone who came from the mainland. I told him later, in the future, don't assume Buddha nature is like this. Otherwise, this kind of Buddha nature would be quite pitiful indeed. This is just as explained in the context of bringing forth of the subject. Remember when we discussed bringing forth the subject, one is evenness. This is called the origination through Kuntuzangmo. One is purity. This is the origination through Kuntuzangpo. The inseparability of purity and evenness. This is the origination of the union of wisdom and method. Just as we explained before, the nature of all phenomena, the inseparability of purity and evenness. This is called the perfection of the ground. In other words, the spontaneously present mandala of all phenomena's nature. Concerning this nature having never been restricted by anyone, when we carefully contemplate this point, it truly reveals itself to be so. The primordial ground must inherently be this way. If it weren't like this, it would lead to logical inconsistencies. When examined through logic, it simply wouldn't hold up under analysis. Nothing has ever bound this nature. Neither karma nor afflictions have ever constrained it. There is no need for it to be set free. Speaking from the perspective of true nature, indeed it's primordially free from bondage and liberation. Free from all modes of dualistic phenomena, it is neither restricted nor does it fall to any direction, because it is entirely free from duality, whether it be perceiver or perceived, pure or impure, nirvana or samsara. All these dualistic phenomena exist only as mere designations before sentient beings with deluded minds. In reality, there is no partiality whatsoever, naturally abiding as the inseparability of the two truths. The primordial nature of all phenomena should indeed originally abide in a non-conceptual self-nature. It is just like water and its inherent wetness. They are completely inseparable. This is called the fundamental nature of the ground. These are just different facets of the same reality. What we previously called the spontaneously present primordial ground is referred to here as the fundamental nature of the ground. Actually, the fundamental nature of the ground is the nature of mind. We could put it this way: the nature of our mind is neither solely emptiness nor solely luminosity. Rather, its actual mode of being, the genuine original face of all phenomena, is precisely this union. If we express this through certain pith instructions of the Great Perfection, the nature of mind can also be called the fundamental nature of the ground. And when this is precisely realized, it is enlightenment. Whether it was in the past, present, or future, any person who, through a teacher's pith instructions, or like those with the sharpest faculties, such as Kuntu Zangpo, who attain self-realization, or those who have already attained realization through a teacher's pith instructions, are thinking, so this is what all phenomena's true nature actually is. Through realizing it, that very ground becomes the ground of nirvana. That same ground becomes the ground of nirvana. Whereas not realizing this is the ground of samsara. If one hasn't realized it, even though its nature is this pure, it becomes the nature of samsara, the ground of samsara. Since the phenomena of samsara and enlightenment have never been other than this nature, this is called the ground. Why is it called ground? The root of samsara is also this. The root of nirvana is also this. So in other sections of the Guhyagarbha Tantra, this ground is compared to life force. All phenomena possess the life force of luminosity. What does this mean? If we have realization, for instance, take this stone. Within it, there is inherently both luminosity and emptiness. If I recognize its true nature, then its luminosity becomes manifest and brings me to awakening. Similarly, many great Chan masters awakened upon hearing a sound. For example, when Master Zhuyun's teacup fell, crash, at that moment he is said to have attained enlightenment. For us, though, that same sound might provoke anger. What a wretched thing! And we just throw it away. This could make us angry and cause us to fall into lower realms. That's very possible. But here's the thing. If you recognize it, it becomes a cause for awakening. If you fail to recognize it, it becomes a cause for further delusion. So why is it called the ground in ground, path, and result? It's the fundamental root. So in all phenomena, it's like the Dharmata itself, possessing this vital life force. This unchanging and continuous nature that has endured from the time of being a sentient being all the way until enlightenment is called a continuum. Didn't we just call it the Tantra of the ground? Why is it called Tantra of the ground? Because this very nature of ours, from the time we're ordinary beings all the way until we become Buddhas, never really changes at all if you're looking at how things actually are. The ground of reality at the stage of Buddhahood, and this same ground while we are sentient beings, from the perspective of its essential nature, it has never changed. On a relative level, however, it certainly seems as though things change. In terms of our lived experience, we have afflictions as ordinary beings, whereas a Buddha is entirely free from them. It's like space. When covered by clouds, the sky can no longer be seen. Once those clouds disperse, we say that the true face of space has reappeared. Yet, from the perspective of space itself, it has remained exactly as it was, whether obscured by clouds or not obscured by clouds. For space itself, there's no difference whatsoever. But to us, it looks like the sky has two different states, right? Now let's look at the ground of reality we've been talking about. Whether you're still an ordinary person or you've already become a Buddha, that basic nature has never changed, not even a little bit. It's always been there, running like a continuous thread. And that's exactly why we call it continuum. Think about it. Doesn't Tantra literally mean continuity? Since it never breaks, it's like when water becomes ice. Actually, water's essential nature hasn't changed at all. When it's in liquid form, it's just water. When it becomes solid, it's still just the same water. That's why we have to recognize this luminous Buddha nature. It's the one thing that's always there. If we ourselves didn't have Buddha nature, then in the end, why would awakening ever occur? So nowadays, many people think all phenomena's nature is merely emptiness. There's simply no way to avoid this logical flaw. If the nature of all phenomena were only emptiness, then at the moment of realization, my experience would have to be completely blank. There would be nothing there at all, because nothingness is what you're calling the ultimate reality. By that logic, even when I finally attain Buddhahood, everything would still be utterly empty. There would be no wisdom, no compassion, nothing. But we know that's not true. Just look at the pith instructions that Mipham Rinpoche laid out so clearly in the Beacon of Certainty. This is absolutely crucial. We must acknowledge that all sentient beings possess Buddha nature. However, don't mistake this for something from your imagination. It's not some bright glowing object like a butter lamp just sitting there inside your heart. By the strength of having actualized the purity of the ground, the perfected result of kayas and wisdom manifests. Given that this is based on the way things appear, it is posited to be the Tantra of the root cause. Why? Because through the power of having actualized the purity of the ground, since this primordial ground is already within us, through the power of the primordial ground, when one finally attains the result, the 3 kayas and 5 wisdoms can all fully manifest. So from the perspective of appearance, it can be called the Tantra of the root cause. Within each sentient being's mind stream, this potential exists. By relying on it, the result can eventually manifest. So Buddha nature can also be called the Tantra of the root cause. Earlier, we called it the Tantra of the ground. Here, it's the Tantra of the root cause. Actually, they both refer to the exact same thing. If you look back at Mipham Rinpoche's outline, he used the terms Tantra of the root cause or Tantra of the ground. That's what he said, right? Why is it called the Tantra of the root cause? Because it serves as the cause, and ultimately the fruition manifests as well. Mipham Rinpoche has a specific text, the wish-fulfilling treasury, which is a concise explanation of the pith instructions. It's all explained very clearly in there. We absolutely must acknowledge that even while we are ordinary beings, there is both a pure Buddha nature and an empty essence present within us. If this luminous or clarity aspect weren't there alongside emptiness, then at the moment you become a Buddha, the Buddha would have nothing more than an experience of realizing a void. There would be no great compassion to guide sentient beings, and none of the enlightened qualities like the perfect marks and signs, none of these would be possible. Nowadays, when some people study the Dharma, they focus exclusively on emptiness, but just discussing emptiness alone is absolutely not supremely excellent. The ground's empty aspect is revealed by various names as mentioned in the Mother of the Victorious Ones and other texts, such as the space of phenomena, the perfectly pure absolute, the nature as it is, and so forth. When Shakyamuni Buddha turned the second wheel of Dharma, he taught that the nature of reality has 2 inseparable facets: emptiness and purity. The emptiness facet refers to the fact that reality is beyond the 4 extremes and 8 mental elaborations. In the extensive, medium, and concise Prajnaparamita Sutras, the Buddha refers to this emptiness constantly. But what kind of terminology does he use? He uses names like the space of phenomena, the perfectly pure absolute, the nature as it is, and so forth. These are all part of the teachings from the second turning. In the sutra that reveals the essence, the aspect of the ground's appearance of kayas and wisdom is revealed by the term Buddha nature. Now this brings us to Shakyamuni Buddha's third turning of the wheel. In this third turning, the focus is on the pure aspect of sentient beings, the Buddha nature. This is found throughout the sutras. In fact, I was looking into this just the other day. The Tathagata Garbha Sutra, the Buddha Treasury Sutra, and the Mahaparinirvana Sutra. Remember, we've discussed the 10 sutras of definitive meaning before, haven't we? When I was at Hong Kong University recently, I gave a talk titled Opening the Treasury of the Mind. That was the topic. While preparing, I reviewed those 10 key sutras from the sutra tradition. I didn't quite dare to dive into the Vajrayana teachings there. Let's be honest, if I had, it wouldn't just be the students who'd be lost. Even some great Dharma masters wouldn't understand. It would probably just end up causing a lot of frustration for everyone, myself included. So instead, I only talked about the sutra-level analogies for why Buddha nature exists and how we can uncover it. I also explained some of the basic principles behind recognizing the luminous aspect of the mind. Looking at the Chinese Buddhist canon, specifically the Buddha Treasury Sutra and the Tathagata Garbha Sutra, I found they have been translated remarkably well. We have those same sections in Tibetan as well. All of these texts discuss Buddha nature, as does the Uttara Tantra Shastra. They all teach exactly how this nature exists right now within the mind stream of every sentient being. The Buddha already laid these principles out very clearly during the third turning. In those texts, the term used is Tathagatagarbha, or Buddha nature. But really, if we take the luminosity of the third turning and the purity or emptiness of the second turning, and study them as a whole, only then do we have the complete picture of the Buddha's teachings. If we only study the conventional truths teachings like karma, cause and effect, or past and future lives, then we are only looking at the first turning of the wheel. If we then add the middle way and the Prajnaparamita teachings on emptiness, but only talk about the emptiness side of things, then we've reached the second turning. But if we go further and study the Uttara Tantra or the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, texts that represent the third turning, and then bring in the Vajrayana to tie it all together, that is when it becomes truly profound. This is why Mifam Rinpoche, in his Beacon of Certainty, so highly praises the teachings of Rongzom Pandita and the omniscient Longchen Pa, and how they integrate the third and second turnings into one. He offers these praises over and over again for exactly this reason. In this definitive vehicle of mantra, the truth of the inseparability of appearances and emptiness, the nature of great purity and evenness, is called the mandala of the original ground. In Vajrayana, we look at how those two, the second and third turnings, essentially they each emphasize a different side of the same reality. Does the second turning completely lack the inner meaning of Buddha nature? Not at all. It simply puts the primary focus on emptiness. And what about the third turning? Does it lack the view of emptiness? No, it's still there. It's just that the focus shifts to the luminous aspect of Buddha nature. In Vajrayana, these two aspects come together. Think of it like this. Suppose you have a plate of vegetables over here and a bowl of rice over there. If you combine them and eat them together properly, then you finally have a complete and satisfying meal. Precisely realizing this is to arrive at the state of one taste, with the fundamental nature just as it is, the status of a Sugata. This is exactly why some great masters say that without the highest realization of Vajrayana, it is impossible to attain full Buddhahood. This is the underlying reason. If you truly reach a deep, intuitive understanding of the principle we just discussed, that purity and luminosity are inseparable in their very essence, and you arrive at that state of one taste, where they are indistinguishable, then that is the status of a Sugata. Since perfectly pure wisdom is ever increasing within the ultimate meaning of the fundamental nature, this is called Buddha. Now, some of you might be wondering, if that's the case, what about high-level bodhisattvas? For instance, it is said that a bodhisattva of the first bhumi has already seen the dharmata, the true nature of reality, exactly as it is. Even Jetsongkhapa, in his Golden Garland, which is his extensive commentary on the Abhisamaya Lamkara, points out that when it comes to the state of meditative equipoise, a first bhumi bodhisattva has already directly realized the true nature of all phenomena. There is even a saying that the wisdom of a Buddha and the wisdom of a first bhumi bodhisattva are essentially, at least from the standpoint of their meditative absorption, exactly the same. But actually, Mifam Rinpoche also explained that only at the level of Buddhahood are even the most subtle obscurations regarding the Dharmadhatu completely removed. This implies that prior to Buddhahood, from the first all the way to the 10th bhumi, various levels of obscuration still remain. And logically, if there are still obscurations, there must be certain aspects of reality that haven't been fully seen yet. Also, how does it say in the Beacon of Certainty? I've actually forgotten the exact Chinese wording of the verse for a moment. How does it go? Doesn't it say that for bodhisattvas who have reached the bhumis, their vision of the Dharmadhatu becomes progressively clearer and more vivid? When bodhisattvas reach the bhumis and see the Dharmadhatu, doesn't their vision progressively become clearer and more complete? Yes, that's the line. As bodhisattvas progress through the bhumis, their realization of the Dharmadhatu, the ultimate nature of reality, becomes increasingly vivid. Now, if it's getting clearer, this implies that at the first bhumi, the vision is not yet fully clear. It is only through the subsequent stages that it reaches full maturity. I recall that some great masters of the Jonang school, when explaining the realization of Buddha nature, described it like this. At the first bhumi, a bodhisattva has fully realized the emptiness aspect of all phenomena. By the 8th bhumi, the Buddha nature aspect begins to come into view, and by the 10th bhumi, they see an even greater portion of this Buddha nature. It is said that at the 8th bhumi, one begins to see at least a small glimpse of the luminous aspect of Buddha nature. That vision continues to expand through the 10th bhumi. It is only at the level of Buddhahood that the pure, essential nature of Buddha nature is seen in its absolute totality. That is one way it's explained. And it makes me think, I believe the omniscient Longchenpa in the Lama Yangtik, when discussing the stainless dimension of space, also mentioned that even for 10th bhumi bodhisattvas, the vision of Buddha nature's true face continues to become progressively clearer. There are several teachings that point to this, and if that's the case, then for us ordinary beings right now, trying to see emptiness and purity as completely inseparable is extremely difficult. Think about it. Even a first bhumi bodhisattva still needs their realization of both Buddha nature and emptiness to become much more vivid and clear. Even if you have gained some insight into the emptiness aspect, the luminous aspect of the mind still reveals itself in varying degrees of depth. Reflecting on this, it occurs to me, perhaps when Jetsongkhapa stated that there is no fundamental difference between the meditative wisdom of a first bhumi bodhisattva and that of a Buddha, he was referring to the two aspects we discussed, evenness and purity. From the perspective of evenness, meaning the empty nature of all things, the bodhisattva has already seen the truth. But from the purity perspective, it might still need to become progressively clearer. This aligns with several of Mipham Rinpoche's treatises, where he explicitly asks, when bodhisattvas reach the bhumis and see the Dharmadhatu, doesn't their vision become progressively clearer? If we put it this way, we find a remarkable consistency with the teachings of the Jonang masters as well. Their views are actually quite similar, and this is a crucial point to understand. The primordial ground of all phenomena is exactly like this. Whoever truly and fully sees it exactly as it is, that person is a Buddha. Those who have realized this to some degree are called practitioners on the path. If you only see this truth in a general or conceptual way, you are at the path of accumulation or the path of preparation. If you have fully realized the emptiness aspect, but still need to deepen your realization of the luminous aspect, then you are progressing from the 1st through the 10th bhumis. In other words, this progressive clearing of the vision is what defines the transition from the path of seeing through the path of meditation and finally to the path of beyond training. This is a profound question, and I hope that many of you, as you gradually investigate and contemplate these teachings, will come to understand this for yourselves.
Sonandai Tantra Rogaya Tonani Dana Basi Jirgana Jirano Chukai Chupun Sonen Droa Droa
Bandangara Badma Sodargye Bandangara Badma Sodargye Bandangara Badma Sodargye